Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Where are we? Welcome, I have to read out the welcoming statement. Welcome to this meeting of the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Authority. This meeting is being held at our Fire and Police Shared Headquarters in Eastleigh. The meeting is being recorded and broadcast on the authority's website and will be available for repeated viewing. The press and members of the public are also permitted to film and broadcast this meeting. Those remaining at the meeting are consenting to being filmed and recorded and the possible use of these images and recordings for broadcasting purposes. There is no scheduled fire alarm today. In the event of an alarm going off, out that door, that way, into the car park, and follow someone in uniform. You know how the microphones work. If you're not using them, turn them off, please, because they sap the energy for other people. So, moving to the agenda items. Item 1, apologies for absence. Adam, anything?
We've had apologies from Councillor Lucioni and Councillor Madrick.
Okay, thank you. Declarations of interest. Any? Don't think so. The minutes of the previous meeting on the 16th of June. Does anybody have any comments on those meetings? No? Okay. I will sign them later, as agreed. Did we all agree the minutes of the last meeting? Thank you, David. Try and finish by lunchtime. No, good man. Good man. All for it. All for it. Right. Item 5, Chairman's announcements. You will have read. Oh, deputation. We've done deputations.
You didn't say the words. There's no deputations.
There were no deputations. Sorry. Okay. Now, item 5. You will know that Gary Westbrook, the former Deputy Chief Executive, has been appointed as the new Chief Executive for Hampshire County Council. His appointment was confirmed by the full Council on the 17th of July. Anyone got any comments on that? No. Also, in terms of appointments, there is a new Chief Constable for Hampshire and the Isle of Wight Constabulary. Alexis Boone has been appointed as the new Chief Constable. His appointment, recommended by the Police and Crime Commissioner, Donna Jones, was confirmed by the Police and Crime Panel on the 24th of June, and he officially took up the role on the 4th of August. We wish him every success. Fire Cadet Pass-Out celebrations. We have celebrated end-of-programme pass-outs at 4 of our 7 cadet units. Cadets from Rushmore, Ringwood, Sandown and Southsea successfully completed the Fire Cadet programme, attaining their BTEC qualifications, accredited first aid, and gaining a range of life skills to carry forward. Several cadets also received national recognition NFCC awards, which there are only 10 issued per year across the country, for outstanding contributions to their communities and for applying their first aid skills in real-life emergency situations. Pass-outs were supported by senior officers and deputy lieutenants across the county, alongside friends and family and stations, and also authority members who will be able to tell us a little later. His Majesty's inspection report has been issued. Following the inspection in the spring of 2025, the report for the fire service was published on the 14th of August 25, and all members have been notified. The report highlights 2 causes for concern, and the Chief Fire Officer, along with the executive team, is preparing an action plan to address these. In addition, the report identifies several areas of improvement, and members will be updated for further details in due course. I think it's worth saying that there are some really good bits in that report, and we shouldn't be clouded by things which we can address and which we are addressing. If it wasn't for those 2 areas of concern, we'd be patting ourselves on the back. So it is important because of the work that went into that was absolutely enormous. So please don't forget that there are good bits in there. and we remain, I think, a good fire service. Any comments, Chairman?
Thank you, Chairman, and kind of you to say so. I think it's fair to say my team and I are disappointed at parts of the report, but nonetheless, it is about improvement. It is about making sure that we continue to grow and improve as a service. And certainly the causes of concern, we have worked already very hard with the HMI to understand them and to be clear about our action plans, and they're being pulled together very quickly. And we're in conversation with the HMI about the actual actions we need to take for them to be satisfied with some of the issues. I want to absolutely stress that particularly in the issues around our mobilising control room, we have not had any delay in mobilising to our communities and to reassure our communities that that system still works well. It is an administrative issue that we've had in terms of the slowdown in that system, which I'll update members much more about in the coming weeks. Two bits are worth noting as well, or on a positive note out there, two bits of notable practice which the Fire Authority have been big supporters of. Our medical response is recognised as notable across the country, and also our work on fire contamination and protecting our firefighters, along with the Fire Brigades Union, focused on making sure our firefighters are protected from the very worst and dangerous contaminants of fire. We're pointed out to be notable in that regard as well. So there's a lot of good things in here as well, as the Chairman said, but we're not going to dine out on that. It's important we focus on the things to improve, but equally let's not overly concern ourselves about the overall state of the organisation. It's still a positive, good organisation, and some good things to celebrate as well as things to focus on. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. You will have noticed that this is a very busy period for the fire service. Between April and mid-August, Hampshire and the Isle of Wight saw 1,707 fires in the open, with 3,658 resources deployed. That is a 69% increase on previous cooler summers and just below the very busy hot summer of 2022. Our teams have also supported neighbouring areas, including 67 deployments in August alone, to just 3 large heathland fires in Dorset and Wiltshire. Anyone want to comment on that? Or no?
Yes, Chairman, just a quick one in terms of supporting adjacent authorities and heath fires, and I think there's a lot that we need to be doing, as well as working with the media generally, about raising the awareness of being a responsible citizen in terms of heath fires, because the more we can get into the minds of our residents the need to not have barbecues or act irresponsibly, the better we can perform more generally, because we're not actually having to go and deal with issues that shouldn't have arisen.
It is tricky. Any suggestions?
I think we just need to have probably a publicity programme, have a look at that. I think we're doing a fair bit at the moment, but there's always an opportunity to do more, and engaging the younger people as well. I mean, we mentioned the cadets who'd passed out. Have they been invited to message everyone about those sorts of things? And it's one of those things that you have to. It's persistent. You have to keep doing it. But I do think that it's important that we perhaps revisit what we do, and can we do a bit more? Because if we can bring down the numbers of heath fires, for example, which so many of which are caused by residents getting it wrong, put it that way, I think that would be a good thing.
We have something here which says pack a picnic, not a barbecue, and protect your countryside. Where does that go to now?
So, I mean, thank you. I think it's a really important point. Actually, Hampshire and Isle of Wight area, compared to many other areas, have been relatively low in terms of lower than some other areas of the country in terms of these wildfires. It has definitely been a difficult season because of its dryness. But I have to say the team, our comms team, our prevention team, and indeed all of our firefighters out on site, have done a great job of making sure the message is sent. And I was just pointing the chairman towards the website, which the front page says pack a picnic, not a barbecue. So there's lots of work done, not saying that you can never do enough. There's always more and more we can do. And now is a great opportunity to remind people, despite the rain, it will still continue to be a difficult season down here. So Yorkshire, there's a major incident still going on with major fires. Our neighbours experienced major fires this year as well, which we've been helping with. So yeah, it's an ongoing challenge on all of fire resources in a diminishing period.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Item 6, member developments. Hit me. Fran.
Thank you,
Forrest.
Chairman. On the 4th of July, I went to the Ringwood Fire Cadet Pass-Out ceremony. As always, it was great to see really enthusiastic cadets doing their thing, with the fire engines and the exercises they showed us. And also it was great to see the respect they have for the volunteer trainers. One of the gentlemen, I'm sorry I didn't have his name written down, he's been doing it for 25 years and he was retiring. I thought that was really great, and they so showed their appreciation for him. And these schemes, they give youngsters invaluable life skills and many a future career path. So it's always well worth going to see what they're doing. So I'd recommend, if people haven't seen it, to go along. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Fran. Zoe?
Thank you, Chairman. I met with children and young people officers to, obviously as the children and young people champion, just to have an update of where we are and sort of the year end of the young people's programmes. And I was really also delighted in the HMI report that they had noted as promising practice the 118 volunteers that we manage and the value that we give to them. And in particular, the 59 volunteers that run the cadet programme. So that was great to have a catch up with officers, but also to see that promising practice in the HMI report. I also attended a multi-agency briefing in Victoria's Festival, which was quite a unique experience to me, to actually see how multi-agencies work to keep everyone safe in that type of environment, and also speak to the firefighters that were there and to talk about the training that they specifically have to join that multi-agency, and to make sure everyone's safe while they enjoy a festival. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Lou?
Thank you. I had an opportunity to talk to members of the Fire Brigade Union on Tuesday the 18th of July when they attended out the front of fire headquarters, which was really, really invaluable for me to understand what the front line are experiencing. And I would like to also take this opportunity, because we didn't meet in July, to thank everybody that was involved in the work when the bus went into the river in Bishopstoke in June, which was an awful, awful incident. But my thanks go out to everybody involved to make sure our young people and everybody was kept safe. So thank you.
David?
Chairman, it was good to see that the fire service were present at the New Forreston County Show. I stopped by to have a chat. That the people there actually work on arson. And of course, a lot of this goes to the reference that Councillor Drew made earlier on about prevention. Very aware that across Hampshire, we often attend fetes and fairs and have a presence, and I think that sort of ongoing work has an enormous value in terms of reminding people about the dangers of barbecues and all the other antisocial things that we would rather not happen. So it was good to see, and it was good to engage with them.
I mean, that's a good point. You know, we all have fairs and fetes and things in the summer, and it's well worth having a talk to your local station to see if they can provide a fire engine, because they are hugely important and well received in the fetes, and it gives us pretty good PR coverage. And they're delighted to do it. I mean, they won't come out if operational stuff prevents it, of course. But remember for next summer, you know, go and get your fire truck. Roger.
Thank you. In the last period, the only meeting I've attended this time is the NJC on the 7th of August, and that was just to go through and sign off the Gold Book, which has been revised for the first time for 13 or 14 years. So it's been brought up to date and connected with the Grey Book, so that the interlinks are still there. So that's now up to date and has been issued in the last 2 or 3 weeks.
Okay, thank you. Members, there are some cadet passing out parades and things coming up in the autumn. I do hope you can go to them. They're appreciated. The last passing out parade for full-time firefighters is in December. I would please like a good turnout for that. The Lord Lieutenant is coming, who, as you know, is very keen on our fire service. So a good showing there, please, would be much appreciated. And you get biscuits. So it's all right.
It follows the fire authority meeting.
Sally.
Just to apologise really for not being able to attend anything. Obviously I've been out of action for about 6 weeks due to a medical episode, and I do have plans to go to the Gosport Fire pass out. I think it's December. It's already in my diary, so I'm disappointed I missed the Sandown one because that was in my diary, but obviously I couldn't attend. Just wanted to make that noted.
Okay, thank you. Any more members? Right, moving on to item 7, the appointments report. Committee deputies and principal officers pay review working group, which is on page 11 of your paperwork. And I would invite Paul Hodgson to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning, members. So this was intended to be a fairly simple, straightforward report seeking appointment of substitute members to each of the 2 committees, just so that if a full member of those committees is absent, a substitute member from the same political group can attend in their place. And it also asks the authority to appoint 3 members to form the Principal Officer Pay Review Working Group. So that's just a working group, not a committee. I understand there are potentially going to be some changes in political groupings that haven't quite worked their way through yet. So I think we probably just need to be as pragmatic as possible and appoint substitutes as far as we're able today. And then we may need to revisit proportionality and seat allocation in October.
Do you want names now?
We do need names and the authority's agreement that those members are appointed as substitutes and to the working group, please, yeah.
For which committee?
Both of them. So a substitute member for the Conservative group to the Audit and Governance and 3S Fire stakeholder committee, a substitute member for the Liberal, Democrat and Labour group to each of those 2 committees, and then it's probably a question as to whether it's possible to appoint from the Independent Alliance at present. So we may need to hold that one in abeyance.
Okay.
There aren't any. That's the... Adam, you can say who's been appointed to each committee, I think, can't you?
So Audit and Governance has Councillor Harrison as the chairman, Councillor Drew as vice chairman, Councillor Parker, Goodfellow and Parker Jones as the members. And the stakeholder
Okay, hang
committee...
on, let's deal with that one
Let's
first.
deal with that first.
And you want a Conservative substitute, which will probably be Zoe? Or Fran? Fran? Fran Carpenter, please. Next. Oh, you want a Lib Dem one?
Lib Dem one is myself.
Okay. Next.
Okay, and the stakeholder is Councillor Goodfellow as the chairman, Councillor Carpenter as the vice chairman, and then Councillors Huggins, Madgwick and Lucioni as the members.
So, boys, one of you two? David Drew.
Chairman, I'm very happy to be a substitute. Pop me on the bench for when there's meeting.
You're the sort of committee member I like. Okay, Councillor Drew, please.
And David Harrison from the Lib Dems.
So then it's just the members for the working group?
And
we need
for
a
the
chairman
working
and
group, the principal
members?
officers pay for that will be Roger and Zoe and Sally. Roger. Do we all agree, members?
if I may make an observation on these things, that I think those who are sitting watching us might wonder why we're getting so party political over these matters, and it's a requirement that we do. As far as I'm concerned, I'm here not with a party political hat on, but to serve you, to serve the members of the public, and I'm pretty damn certain that all of us think the same. So please don't go away with the impression that we're trying to angle on any party political arrangement, because this is far more important as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
No, good point, David. I mean, I always stress to new members on the authority that our job here is to keep the population of Hampshire safe. It is not to play politics, because politics has no role in this effort. And I'm really pleased to say, in the years that I've been doing this, people agree with that. They adhere to this, because we are here to serve the people of Hampshire. Thank you, David, for raising that. Any more on that issue? Okay, moving on to item 8, the modern slavery statement, which is on page 15 of your notes. May I ask, and may I congratulate Matt Robertson for even being here. You will have noticed he's looking a bit crocked, because he fell off his bicycle and broke his collarbone, which is... I did suggest he had a bigger sling to make it look more dramatic, but never mind. Matt, thank you for coming, and welcome. So if you could have our report, please.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for the introduction. Thank you, members. So this report is an annual report of our modern slavery statement. So it's part of our statutory requirement under the Modern Slavery Act 2015 for us to publish a slavery and human trafficking statement on an annual basis. So this report, the statement has been reviewed. So it's been reviewed with input from our safeguarding team and our people and organisational development teams alongside our procurement advisors. There's no changes proposed to the statement from the current one, and it's at the appendix for your approval and consideration today. If it's approved, it will then be published on the authority's website. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Matt. Members, David, please.
Yes, Chairman, I did give it a quick read, just to check that we don't agree with slavery. And I'm relieved to say that it seems entirely in accord with our values, and I would recommend that we approve it.
Okay. Any more members? Fran?
I'm just curious, really, if any instances of modern slavery have been discovered in the work of the firefighters and staff.
So we have not discovered any instances of it. We have various mechanisms in place to safeguard like our supply chains, which is where it could happen potentially is further down the supply chain. But there are various processes within our procurement teams and our safeguarding teams that kind of assure us when we go out and tender that organisations meet various requirements. We're also having our internal audit team conduct an audit on all of those processes in the next financial year to also help with that kind of assurance that the statement is being embedded and is being followed.
Okay, Lou.
I was just wondering, given the fact that our fire officer frontline may come into contact with different groups and businesses during the course of their work, do they have a mechanism for raising concerns where they think that the place they've been to might be operating with modern day slavery and or human trafficking? Thank you.
Yes, so we have a very robust safeguarding process, and teams undertake training in terms of how to identify instances where that might be the case, and then we have our dedicated safeguarding team where the team can raise things, and that's then through a multi-agency support, obviously with local authorities and the constabulary as well, so those can be escalated. So teams are aware of signs to look for, and then the reporting mechanisms are in place for that to be reported back.
Zoe.
Can I just add to that? Actually, that was recognised in the HMI inspection report as well.
David?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Very quickly, people are our most valuable asset and resource, and I'm wholly supportive of this modern slavery statement. I think the exploitation of people, however it's done, is utterly wrong. and delighted that we have a process for ensuring that we keep that to an absolute minimum if we and hopefully exclude it completely. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Stephen.
You asked my question, so I shouldn't.
Thank you. Any more members? No? Okay, well, the recommendation is that the annual statement of equality at Appendix A be approved by Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Authority and published on our website.
Agreed.
Agreed. Good, thank you. Item 9, the annual statement of equality, which is on page 27 of your paperwork. And I would invite Molly Rowland to introduce this, please.
Thank you. Good morning, members. Good morning, Chairman. So this is an annual report which meets our obligations under the Equality Act 2010 to publish equality information on an annual basis and update on our progress against our equality objectives. So our equality information can be found on slides 17 to 20 of Appendix A, and today I want to take an opportunity to update you on the diversity of our workforce and also our progress against the equality objectives. So our numbers of females is at 20% of our workforce, and this has slightly increased across our operational roles. So we continue to perform favourably in this area amongst sort of many other fire and rescue services. Our employment of non-white British personnel is at 5%, which is above other services in our family group, but we continue to fall behind the sector nationally, and we're also not representative yet of the communities we serve, where across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, 15% of the population is non-white British. So we know that we need to do more to continue to engage with our communities and understand the barriers that they face in joining our service. Our employment with individuals with a disability has also increased, and this is now at 10%, and that's above the sector average. And we know that many of our workforce are neurodiverse, and we're supporting increasing numbers of employees through neurodiversity assessments and working with management to make adjustments accordingly. We've also seen an increased disclosure from employees who have a sexuality other than heterosexual, and we're comparing well against the sector here. However, we know that some staff still feel hesitant about sharing this information, and we need to continue to encourage employees to feel confident about coming forward and sharing this information with us. So whilst there is some positive progress in respect of our workforce diversity, we know that it takes time to become representative of the community we serve, and that it's critical that we remain committed to positive action and developing an inclusive culture over the longer term. And we know that that is something that HMI have also recognised in their report. It's going to be particularly important for us as a service over the coming 12 months, where we continue to face financial challenges, which means we are likely to limit our opportunities to recruit new employees. Moving to our equality objectives, in the past 12 months we've undertaken a range of activity to progress these, and these are also detailed within Appendix A of our annual statement of equality report. We've been heavily focused on delivering training to teams across our workforce to continue to ensure that they respect each other at work, take personal responsibility for living our service values, and holding each other to account when behaviour falls below that which we expect. This includes ensuring staff are also aware of the range of ways that they can raise concerns that they may have, such as our anonymous reporting line, Say So. And over the next 12 months, we will be commissioning an evaluation of our equality, diversity and inclusion training to understand the impact it has made across our workforce, and also how we can continue to evolve that training to ensure it meets the future challenges we face in our organisation. So our strive to develop an inclusive culture is not just about practising respect and appreciation for difference, but it's also about ensuring the spaces we work in and the equipment we use supports this inclusive culture. And to this end, we've taken steps to ensure that our fire stations are also inclusive spaces, and we have retrofitted 12 fire stations to ensure they meet our design principles of having healthy and inclusive workspaces. And we engage with over 500 staff in procuring our new BA sets in order to ensure that the design of those met any equality issues that staff raised. As in previous years, a significant focus has been on understanding our organisational culture and identifying opportunities to improve the way that we work together. We have published a people and culture dashboard, which is accessible to all of our employees and tracks key people and culture metrics. and we use this to identify trends, spot emerging issues and develop interventions. The dashboard is supported by the continued use of regular pulse surveys to understand the views of our workforce and their experiences. Recent results continue to reflect the immense pride our staff feel in being part of the service, and this is reflected in their positive behaviours in terms of their engagement with our peer-to-peer recognition scheme, where they recognise each other for role modelling the service values. And engagement in this rose 48% over the last year, and all of those who were nominated were invited to a celebratory lunch with the Chief Fire Officer and other directors. So in closing, I just want to draw your attention to where our focus will be over the next 12 months. We will continue to drive improvements in our disclosure rate and our representation of the communities we serve. This will be supported through positive action and attendance at community events, and we will also be establishing our people panel as outlined in our Safety Plan 25 to 30. At a time of significant change and uncertainty, we know that having a healthy, well-supported and resilient workforce is critical to our success. Therefore, we will continue to develop interventions to promote positive health and well-being, and this will include reviewing our support in respect of mental health and access to specialist support, particularly during times of trauma. We will respond to the findings by His Majesty's Inspectorate, and we will continue to act on the insights that we receive from our own staff surveys, and we will continue to collaborate with the NFCC and other services to ensure we share learning and best practice. Before taking questions, I just wanted to take an opportunity to give recognition and appreciation to the work of our network groups and our culture, ethics and behaviours group, as well as teams across the service who continue to embrace opportunities to engage with their local communities and to role model our service values and behaviours, and to share important community safety messages. The last 12 months have been no exception, and as you have all noted yourself, we've been involved in cadets, senior sisters and events, community open days, Eid celebrations and Pride events. This work is vital, ensuring that we continue to remain relevant to the communities we serve. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Molly. Members? Fran.
I know we're going to visit the inspection report another time, but there is one point I wanted to bring up with Molly, if I can. In that report, it says that 18% of respondents to their questions had experienced discrimination over the 12 months. And it says the main reason for not reporting it was that they felt nothing would happen. And I just wondered, if somebody does report something, what actually does happen, and why would those people feel that way? If I could ask you while you're here, Molly, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So that's something that we also track in our own pulse survey. And our most recent pulse survey, that reduced to 12% who said that they had experienced bullying and harassment. But clearly that's still unacceptable within our organisation. So we are digging into the reasons why, and like the HMI found, people have these concerns. I think, so any time somebody raises something, it is absolutely taken seriously and addressed. A challenge that we know that we have is finding a way to share information about action the service can take when somebody comes forward. Clearly, if that results in a disciplinary matter or somebody losing their employment, that person who is also, perhaps guilty of an act of bullying harassment also has protection and a right to confidentiality. But we are trying to find ways through our briefings with middle managers to share insight into kind of the cases that we are dealing with, the themes that we are seeing, and the outcomes that we are kind of delivering when issues are raised. So we're trying to find a balance in terms of sharing that information whilst protecting people's right to confidentiality.
David.
Yes, Chairman, I'm fully signed up to this. We all know, don't we, that equality and diversity is an issue that's had significant negative national press. And I think that's most unfortunate, because what you don't see is that if we fail in our duty to show leadership in this respect, and I'm talking about both the authority members and management, then there are serious implications that follow from it. There are the legal implications because we can fall foul of the Equality Act, and that can be very expensive. And I think it's most unfortunate because a lot of misery arises from people who aren't supported in the way that they should for whatever reason. And so it's not just about satisfying Her Majesty's Inspectorate, it's about doing what we should be doing, you know, supporting all of our staff, which are our most important asset. So I fully support the recommendation, and I'm really pleased that the trends are looking positive in almost every area, but that, of course, not to be complacent. There's still work to be done.
Thank you. Zoe, please.
Thank you, Chairman. As the People's Champion, and that's alongside Karen, who's not with us today, obviously just to thank Molly and her team, because a lot of work, and this is a journey that we go on, so it's not about standing still. It is obviously about continuing to look at those trends. I do think it's a step in the right direction to address, and the focus next year to respond to the HMI Inspectorate report. I'm particularly interested in the People and Culture dashboard, and in particular looking at those performance matrix and understanding those with you, Molly, so working through those, and in particular the trends and maybe how they do correlate to some of the statements in the inspection report. Really good to see a specific focus on sexual harassment, but actually we should be looking at harassment and just discrimination in a whole, especially when we just look at the 12 or 80% that was in the inspection report that have disclosed that. So again, continuing that work. There's still much work to be done. However, there's also much to note in here. So, for example, the positive support that we give health and well-being across those that work for the fire service, and the staff networks. And I think all of us might have either met those chairs and deputy chairs of those networks or been involved in some way. And they are really important actually in supporting our journey regarding engaging staff, valuing staff, and making sure that they're safe within those disclosures. So some really good, promising work within that, and the pride of all the individuals that work for our service. I just have one particular question, Molly. On 11, page 29, regarding the peer-to-peer nomination scheme, you say that it rose by 48%. I just wonder what context that 40% looks like. Rose from what? What do those numbers look like? Because it's a really fantastic scheme.
I don't think I have the exact numbers, but I can certainly find them. I know that we are seeing, you know, it's in the hundreds of people nominated, so it's a significant increase. We're probably reviewing 30 nominations a month, I think. So, and then there's a winner nominated every month who receives a voucher.
Thank you, Zoe. Sally, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just under Molly, under next steps, it says continue to focus on improving low disclosure rates. We've just started up something that's that we're hoping to improve our rates for aggression and violence in the workplace. Unfortunately, where I work, it happens more often now than it ever has. And it's such a long document that we just don't have time to fill in most of the time. So now they're doing a QR code that's up on toilet doors, it's up along corridors, notice boards. So you just click on the QR code and it takes you straight there, and it's a much easier way of reporting. I just thought that might be something that you could maybe consider as, yeah, thank you.
Members,
Thank you.
David.
Thank you very much, Chairman. EDI or DEI has come in for a huge amount of abuse, particularly from the other side, on the other side of the pond. The President of the United States has scrapped it all. This is, I think, a massive mistake. Now, of course, we need to ensure that there is some balance in when we're recruiting people, but we do need to make sure we get the best. And it's ensuring that we are fair and even-handed is vitally important, because we want the best. Just a query, two questions. This is the first one about the 15% of non-white British. my understanding is that that figure also includes non-white European. So consequently, I don't think that there's I don't believe that 15% of the Hampshire population is non-white. What's that got to do with anything? Well, it does impact our statistics. And I've always been of the view, Chairman, that if you look at an organisation, you need to look at its surroundings and is it reflective? I mean, broadly we are, and I think that the figures, Molly, that you've come up with suggest that we are broadly reflective, but there's more work to be done. So I'd like a comment on what the 15% is. Also, if I may ask a question about neurodiversity. I mean, this is actually crucially important, and to declare an interest or for some information is I'm a chairman of a special needs school where there's an awful lot of difference, but there's also a massive amount of talent. So I'd like to be reassured that we are recognising neurodiversity and ensuring that we get the best from people. And it's also vital that people feel comfortable in the workplace, because if they feel comfortable, then we're going to get the best from people, and that's what it's, for my mind, what it's all about. So the question is the 15% figure and also neurodiversity, anything that you can add to enhance what you've already said. Thank you, Molly.
So in terms of the 15%, you're correct that it's for non-white British, so that will include people who are white European in that. So we can probably break it down in lots of different ways, depending on the data that we have. I think it was just trying to find a number that kind of most reflected putting white British into a group and then all others.
I fully accept it's a bit complex when you start getting down into the fine detail, but I just wanted to make the point that it's not 15% across Hampshire that's non-white, that there's more detail there. So great for that. So neurodiversity.
So neurodiversity, yeah, we recognise and have done for some time that a large proportion of our organisation is neurodiverse, and we offer staff assessments in order to kind of better understand their neurodiversity and also what support they need. And we have our personal supportive passports, which are an opportunity for individuals who perhaps have challenges or unique experiences when it comes to kind of learning or sharing of information, to record those so that they can then be shared with their line managers and or with trainers and instructors, so that they can sort of better understand their learning style and their learning needs. And that's been previously recognised as kind of positive practice in previous inspections that we've had. The team, the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion team, give quite a lot of support to those who have neurodiversity and to their managers, ensuring that we kind of are making adjustments and supporting them to continue to thrive within our organisation in all types of roles.
That's brilliant, thank you. And also to tease out hidden talents as well, because my experience is that a lot of these people, you go, oh crikey, you're jolly good at that. I would never have realised otherwise. So I think if we're focusing on that as well, that's great. Thank you, Chairman.
Members, any further questions for Molly Lou?
I just wanted to ask why perhaps our female representation is quite so low from the economically active proportion of our population. Obviously 51% of our population would be reflective, and it's only 20%. So is there anything we're doing positively to encourage women to seek employment within the fire service? Thank you.
Yes, so I think it would be fair to say that the area where we continue to see fewer women is in our operational workforce. Certainly within our support staff and our control room are predominantly female workforces. But operationally, that's an area where we continue to have to take positive action. So we continue to really focus, particularly in the lead up to a whole-time recruitment campaign, on ensuring that the way that we advertise, the audiences that we reach, the engagement that we do, the open days, things like helping with kind of fitness training and all those sorts of things are sort of targeted to being inclusive towards women, so that they feel confident to come forward. We also see that women who join our on-call service and become an on-call firefighter do perhaps feeling confident in that smaller team environment seem to do well then in transferring across to whole-time employment. So that's something that we've kind of been able to track through our kind of evaluation of female employees. But yeah, we continue to work hard to attract and show that the role is open to all, and that women are perfectly capable of meeting the fitness standards required of the role, which I think can be a concern for some.
Thank you, Molly. Any closing remarks? No. Shantha, would you like to say that?
Thanks. I just wanted to come back, Councillor Parker-Jones, on your question when you were specifically referencing economic inactivity or activity. And I just wanted to share with the members of the Fire Authority the work that we're doing in terms of across the wider system. So particularly thinking about the work to the government's missions on getting Britain working, or getting England working, and very much we as an organisation have a seat at that table, because we recognise whilst the nature of some of these questions was around us within the fire service, we actually have a much wider role in terms of working across the sort of partner organisations in encouraging people to work, in designing all sorts of different jobs that can help people become more economically active, because we obviously recognise, as is well known, that if you are economically active, you're going to be not just better for your household finances, but also in terms of health and wellbeing outcomes too. So it's just kind of pointing to the wider work.
Okay. Thank you, members. Thank you, Shantha. So moving to the recommendation, which is that the annual statement of equality at Appendix A be approved by Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Authority and published on our website. Approved? Agreed, whatever. Good, thank you. Moving to item 10, after which we will have a short break. Pensions discretion policies, page 63 of your paperwork. Rob, if I could invite you to present this, please.
Thank you, and good morning, members. So this report relates to the pensions discretions policies that employers need to have in place. So where the authority is an employer with members of the firefighters pension schemes and the local government pension scheme, there are a number of things that the regulations stipulate that the employer must or must not do. Also within the regulations are a number of discretions, and so what these policies do is to set out clearly what the authority has agreed it will do in cases where those discretions may be applied. So these policies were last updated as part of the combination, and it's good practice for policies to be reviewed on a periodic basis. So they have been reviewed, and in carrying out that review, so administrative changes have been made to improve the clarity of the policies. These are largely administrative changes. However, as I said, it's good practice for these to be brought back for you to review and approve the updated policies. So the policies take up quite a number of pages within your packs. However, the changes are largely administrative. For example, being clear and explicit within the policy when the monitoring officer pool will be consulted before a decision is made. And also removing sections where they are no longer relevant, for example, where we don't have any active members in particular schemes anymore. So I'll leave it there as a summary, but of course very happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Rob. Members, David. Please.
Yes, the whole issue of pensions is something of a specialist topic, to say the least. I just wonder to what extent members who perhaps are more familiar with this subject matter have had an opportunity to scrutinise this.
Of course, so the Firefighters Pension Board received the Firefighters Discretions Policy in June, so had the opportunity to review that. There isn't a similar forum for the LGPS policy to go to, but we have it. The overall template is devised by the local government association, so we have a template to follow that's covering those different discretions. But I don't know if Councillor Price, as a member of the pensions board, has...
I think from my point of view, I mean, where necessary, the pensions board has looked at it and agree with it. I mean, it is basically changes in the law and keeping up to date with what has changed. I mean, within the fire services, there's been the Matthews case, which is and all of that, and it's just really updating and keeping up to date with all the latest information. And I think this paper does that.
Is that it, Rob? Good, thank you. Chief.
The sharp-eyed amongst you may have noticed page 107, the template has got the old Hampshire and Isle of Wight logo on it, so we'll have that adjusted at the same time. So, small amendment.
Members, any comments from you? I feel... Yeah. I feel if Roger's happy, I'm happy. Roger is the king of pensions. All right, happy, boys and girls? Okay. Rob, thank you very much. Hang on, we haven't got some back. Recommendations are that the Firefighters Pension Scheme discretionary policies, 92, 2006, 2015, be approved by the full authority, and that the LGPS discretionary policy also be approved by the full authority. Approved? Agreed? Okay, thank you. We'll now take a 10-minute break before the next one. So back at 25:2, please. Refreshed, watered. Right. Thank you, people, for coming back. So moving on to item 11, operational change consultation, which is page 137 on your papers. To start this off, I would invite the Chief Fire Officer to make an opening statement, as it were. Chief.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, members. As you can imagine, and I know how challenging this particular paper is for yourselves as members, but including our Fire Brigade Union colleagues, as well as our own staff. First, I'd like to pay tribute to all those people, and indeed my own senior team and the work that's gone behind the scenes to reach the conclusions that are contained within this paper. As you can imagine, vast amounts of analysis is done in reaching these conclusions, and we try to draw up a defensible position in as much as knowing you can only do so much with so much money. So you recall the backdrop to this is the approval of the budget in February of this year, which the authority had to face, where we described a number of challenging situations with the budget. And in reaching a balanced budget, it was contingent on a saving we would make of £1.7 million, and we would continue to draw £1.8 million from reserves in this financial year. And I'm sure Rob can do a lot more detail than I can. So in the meantime, my teams have been working hard over the last 18 months to look at how we reshape the organisation given the financial challenges, not only of this budget, but the previous one too, and indeed thinking about the one that comes, which I'll say a bit more about in a second. And in doing so, it's not just the front line that we've considered. So looking at our support staff, our hard-working teams behind the scenes, we faced redundancy schemes, we've faced challenges of restructures, we've taken posts out which became vacant, and so we've saved a great deal across the board in making sure we can protect the front line as best we can. So this paper uses the most recent national standards to analyse the risk that we actually face in our communities. Bear in mind, we are a risk-based organisation, not demand-led organisation. We plan our emergency response on what could reasonably happen in our communities. And we look very carefully at what is happening, what has happened, and what could happen in the future. And when we develop a response model and a prevention model and a protection model to make sure those things, we stop the fire happening. If the fire happens, we know that the building can protect the occupants from the fire, and we have response teams that can deal with the fire when they need to respond. However, the medium-term funding, not only just this moment, the medium-term funding into the future across the country looks horrifying. And I don't use that word lightly. Elected members in all levels of government must act to ensure future choices for fire leaders doesn't become untenable in balancing resources to risk, or makes choices like protecting firefighters from dangerous contamination versus adequate crewing numbers a reality every day. Recently, the National Fire Chiefs Council and the Local Government Association have put a statement out about describing real and significant cuts faced by the Fire and Rescue Service in the future across England. We have seen since 2008 11,000 firefighters taken out of the system across the UK, and these next cuts look to reduce by a further 2,300. In context for Hampshire, we're talking from 2002, we've seen whole-time firefighter numbers reduced by 121, on-call firefighters reduced by 212, a total of 333 firefighting reductions since 2002. That cannot continue. Some of those reductions, absolutely, and certainly at the time I've been a chief and a deputy chief beforehand, are things we have done. But we've done on the basis of a reducing funding scheme, we've done on the basis of sometimes of reducing risk. That tide has turned. Our risk continues to grow, our demand is starting to grow, and society's expectations of us continues to grow with flooding, wildfire, emergency rescues, and indeed medical response, saving lives every day. So in order to provide a service which is safe and viable, I've agreed certain operational changes that are expressly within my powers, namely paragraph 5A to E. They've all been agreed already in as much as the powers I have. However, implementation is described within the appendix, the timelines I wish to implement, and would certainly consider any views members have in today's session in how, when, and in what order we implement. I am also considering the feedback from consultation staff and public on items paragraph 4A to C, and that's detailed within the pack as well, the public's view during consultation, and indeed the staff view during consultation. And I'll equally find the valuable input from members in terms of your constituency, your organisations, as to views on those proposals too. I'm asking today the Fire Authority to consider the contents of this report and its appendices and apply your scrutiny duties, which are contained within the authority's constitution. This will enable me to consider all available views before implementation of those items and the decision on the other items which haven't been decided yet. I hope the proposals are clear within the paper and that the contents allow you to provide adequate scrutiny in terms of the detail in the appendix, but certainly officers are here on hand to answer any further questions, not in any way to defend those plans, but to give you context on how we've arrived at them and any flexibility that may exist in their application. So, members, it is with no joy I sit here leading this organisation into this difficult time of financial challenges. It's one of the last duties that I will take on as Chief Fire Officer of this great organisation. What I would say to you is these are difficult choices, but there's more difficult choices to come. In this moment, if we reflect on the fact that we must pursue the increased funding for this organisation and do what is necessary in this time to protect our firefighters on the front line and the organisation at whole so we can continue to perform, that time is running short. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Chief. And in terms of pursuing, that is what we are doing. I have sent to you members exactly what the National Fire Chief's position is and what they've sent to the government, because that's how it should be. I mean, this should be a corporate-led drive for money. But having said that, tomorrow I'll be writing to the government as well and to the MPs of Hampshire. And with your help, you can table your own MPs. Just to get something done, because otherwise we are going down the lavatory. And I personally am fed up with being the Cinderella of the blue light fraternity. I mean, it is absolutely disgraceful. Anyway, back to this paper. Members? Roger?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that firstly I would like to say thanks to the officers and the report, because it's a very full report in outlining all the difficulties and the issues that there are. Although some of the recommendations are there, they're quite light in the number of words used in the recommendations. All the backup papers, which explains the recommendation, are contained within the 75 pages beyond the first page. So it's there, which a lot of it I don't like. And the reason why we have it is that, and I'm going to be very political here, is the previous Conservative government never gave us the funding to carry out the work which we should be doing. They reduced the funding year on year, capital money, etc., and that was the problem. And unfortunately, I expected that the new government coming in would have actually gone the opposite direction, but they haven't. They've done nothing to help at all. In actual fact, in the spending review, according to the NFCC chiefs, is that a further £100 million of the base money is going to be taken out in the next years. Now, that 100 million is across the country. I don't know exactly what that figure is that affects us, but that cannot go on. And the Labour government can't blame the previous government, because, I mean, the one decision which they made in this Parliament is to increase national insurance. And attached to that national insurance was to refund to blue light hospitals and local government the cost of national insurance increase. In our case, we got 50%. So they've gone back, they've reneged on that. So they've worsened our situation from the decisions which they're making. So instead of helping us, they're making it worse for us. And all this is causing a serious situation and putting the service into a situation we would never have expected. I do not like what we are being forced to do, but this has to be the end of any further cuts. I agree with what the Chief has said. Cuts cannot go on. We cannot continue down this route. Otherwise, there will be people's lives at risk. So therefore, it must stop. For instance, in 2004, rescue was added to fire. Prior to 2004, we were a fire service dealing with what it said. Then somebody took the decision to add rescue to it. And that brings a multitude of situations and which we have to respond to, which we never had to before. But no funding at all. So how can the government expect us to carry out what they want us to do without the funding? We know that the wildfires are increasing. More is being expected of us and wildfires to deal with them. More is being expected of us to do with flooding because we're the rescue service and therefore that's what the government wants us to do. And unless they give us the funding, how can we do it? And that is the real problem. I would like to, so that's my feelings of why we're in this situation and why we've got here and why we've got it. We are not masters in our own house to get out of it. The government controls what we can increase council tax by. The government determines the amount of grant we've got. Where else can we go to get funding to provide the services that the people out there and our firefighters expect? There is nowhere. We have set up the 3S Fire, which does help to raise money, but it's small fry to the amount of money that we need. But there's nowhere to go. So the government has got to grasp this and deal with it. Regarding today's report of the cuts here, on 4A, B and C, there's 2 points I'd like to make on 4C, is that I would like the Chief Fire Officer to look at the positioning of the ALP, whether it should be Ryde or Newport. I mean, reading the report, the impression that I got, and in speaking, and also speaking to the Deputy Leader of the Isle of Wight Council, Newport is the better place rather than Ryde. But I'm not saying it should change, but I would like him to re-look at it and see if where it should be. Also, I'd like to know what are the arrangements which we have, should there ever be a need to get another appliance onto the island, because the ferries only run at certain times and very often they're full to capacity. What are the arrangements for us to get a vehicle on there in a very urgent situation? Regarding 5A to E, they are operational decisions which come under the chief. They're not under the fire authority. We took the decision to delegate those situations to him back in February when we did the budget. But I would ask that they are looked at to see if funding can be found from the reserves which we have is £31.77 million. Only 2.5 million of that is free reserves which can be used for anything. But we've got to have money there which, should an emergency come along, we've got money to be able to deal with it. So I would like it to be looked at within those other remaining 29 million, whether any of them have been overestimated and whether there is free money in there which we could take out of those and use to stop any of this happening. So it just needs to be re-looked at and assessed. Are the reserves the correct amount? So I'd ask that that could be done. I'd also like to know what the service or the officers have done in discussions with the branch union within Hampshire and what their reactions have been to this. Because I think it's important to know what our own individual firefighters are saying about it. I feel that the big issue to me is the 5B, and that is the reduction of 16 firefighters. That is the problem. I'd also like the Chief Officer to confirm that there are no redundancies within that situation, that they're natural wastage. I know that natural wastage means you won't have them back there, but that isn't quite as bad as actual forced redundancies. I am going to propose an additional amendment to go on, which will be number 7. I've got it here and I will circulate it, and I'll read it at this point. It says, the above recommendations are reluctantly taken due to funding, and we further ask the Chief Fire Officer and the Chairman to write to the Government in support of the NFCCC press release of the 21st of August 25 and ask for further urgent funding for Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire Service, because it's important we get the money coming into the service. If we don't, we can't provide the services, and the people out there are going to suffer. Sorry for my rant. That's how I feel about it. Thank you.
Ask the Chief to respond to those, otherwise we'll get a backup.
No problem. I'm going to pass to Rob on the substantive points about the operations, but maybe the other Rob first around the fund of money from reserves to offset. Rob, could you?
So yes, we do have reserves that are held on the basis of the authority's approved reserve strategy. And so the money that's set aside within those reserves is set aside for a number of different purposes. So we have some money in there that is for risk mitigation. So we live in a world where unexpected financial shocks can occur, and it makes sense. It's good financial management to have some money set aside so that we can deal with any of those sort of one-off shocks. We've also got money set aside within the reserves where we make annual contributions to the reserves as part of the budget, which allow us to keep investing in the assets, the equipment, the IT that the service needs to be able to operate effectively. So a large proportion of the reserves are currently earmarked for the replacement of vehicles, for investment in the estate, and for the replacement of essential BA and other PPE for firefighters. There's also some money set aside within the reserves which we've been able to build up over the last couple of years in the budget equalisation reserve, where we've had underspends against the budget. And what that has allowed us to do is to be able to deal with the difference in timing between the delivery of savings and the requirement to find additional funding to cover the gap within the budget. So as Neil mentioned earlier, we've got £1.8 million coming from the budget equalisation reserve this year, which is to enable us to set a balanced budget. And then the remainder of the budget equalisation reserve is expected to be exhausted in 26-27 to cover off the forecast gap for next year. So those are the reserves that we hold at the moment, broadly speaking. Of course, there is the opportunity to review the plans for spend against those reserves, but they are largely earmarked at present.
I think what I'm actually saying is that, I mean, the three big ones is capital payments, 13.5 million. Then there's the IT has got a large amount, and so is equipment replacement. I don't want to see any of those taken out. I believe that they are necessary and totally necessary, and we've got to have a reserve for them. But what I want to be looked at is that in putting those figures or coming to the point of those figures, has things changed in a way where we can reduce those figures? Has prices gone down? I know most prices go up, but there are quirks sometimes that things can go down. I would certainly not want to take out the equipment for the firefighters, for the new BAs and the uniforms for them. But with bulk buying and new ways of buying, very often prices will go down. So therefore, all I'm asking to be done is to re-look and see, is it right based on today's situation rather than probably a year ago when they were prepared and put in?
I'm happy to come in onto that question, Councillor Price. So the reserves are reviewed regularly, and those particular reserves are, particularly for IT and for the operational assets one, are largely underfunded if you look at what the requirement is for the replacement of kit and servers. So the way we would manage that is that we contribute slightly less than maybe is needed each year into it, and then it's cash flowed through the lifespan of the replacement programme. But if you take our vehicles, for example, we've already added years onto our replacement of appliances, for example. So we've added 6 years onto the life of an appliance to try and stretch out the cost and when we take on those costs. Same with our IT equipment. So that has been added on another 2 years onto when we would have historically replaced IT equipment and servers. But we don't feel able to advise pushing those things out any further. So there is a piece of work being done this year to look at how we would further cash flow to help in the sort of medium term budget position. But in terms of being able to significantly reduce those reserves, we're not in a position where we think that's an advisable place currently.
I think, if I may, Chairman, it's worth stressing for those who may be tuning in and wondering the difference between 30 million and the money we're trying to save. This is one-off money, and I know members will know that, but it's been clear what reserves is one-off money. Once it's spent, it's spent, and as soon as we start using that to pay for daily costs, it soon dwindles and goes. So reserves are there to make sure we can pay for things when they're needed. So with that price sets, I cannot let that go past a certain point. That's critical safety equipment. Same is true for vehicles. And our fire stations, we know that scheme, and members certainly know that scheme is underfunded. 60 plus locations we have to look after. If we replace one a year, they're 60 years old. We can nowhere near afford to replace one a year. So we have to talk about very old building stock over the long term. And that's something which the NFCC points out to the Minister. Our building stock across the fire estate across the UK is in parlous state. We've seen our own fire station have to be evacuated quickly in Cowes, and we've seen other buildings starting to really deteriorate fast because we can't keep up with the maintenance to keep them available to our community. So it is a real moment in time when the reduction in funding over a long period of time is catching up with us. So, and the reserves are not going to solve that for us in the short term. But I think the point you raise is a really good one. We completely do review it, and I know that we'll look after today's conversation just to make sure there's no more squeezing we can do with that, just to lessen the burden in this moment. Can I talk to Rob with other questions that Roger had?
Good morning, members. I hope I've written the questions down in the right order, so if I don't, please remind me of the question. So I'm going to start with the ALP from the Isle of Wight, if I may. Councillor Price, your point around being at Newport rather than Ryde. All those things have been looked at, and we continue to look at those areas. Newport have a number of different specialist vehicles for a limited or a finite amount of crew at that station, as well as different capabilities at Ryde. So some of our thinking has to be around balancing what specialisms and what training requirements are needed for which firefighter. To give you a bit of context between Ryde and Newport, it's between 15 and 22 minutes apart. From that distance, we know that the ALP on the Isle of Wight is mostly used, or not mostly, it is majority used in the Bay Area around Shanklin and Sandown from previous data, and the Newport fire station will house the specialist rescue vehicles because that can cover the whole of the island from that area, whereas Ryde would cover the Ryde to Newport in the 20-minute time span. There's nothing to say that we cannot put that at Newport, but they're considerations that we've had before and we will continue to have post the public consultation outcomes as well. So a little bit of reassurance there that those things are still being looked at. But the concept of removing an ALP from the Isle of Wight is something that we're content with, but actually where that goes, it will either be Ryde or Newport, because there are two only whole-time stations where they are. Is that happy with?
Chairman,
sure, got the question down.
Chairman, I wonder if I might come in because my question relates directly to the ALP on the Isle of Wight.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So I'm a little bit concerned with the recommendation, which gives the impression at least that we're removing the one and only ALP on the island. That's not the case. We will still have one. And even accepting that that's the case, I think there will be concerns that, you know, what happens if that ALP should, for whatever reason, break down and not be available. And I did a little bit of research and I found out that there is a commercially available ALP on the island, which reaches to the same height. But Roger tells me that it's not exactly the same piece of equipment because it doesn't have the same hose capability. Be that as it may, I wonder whether it's just worth our while conducting a little bit of research to see whether we could utilise the commercial one on a higher basis if the need ever arises, and whether it's possible to adapt it at short notice so that it suits our needs.
Thank you very much for your question. In simple terms, if the only remaining ALP on the Isle of Wight, if this, this decision goes through, if that broke down, then we would move one of the mainland ALPs over to the Isle of Wight because of the travel distance, etc. So that's within our operational response plan that we would do something similar. It's worth pointing out that there are other aerial ladder platforms that we use across the whole of the country. So if, for instance, we had two deployed to an incident and the third incident happened, I would be able to call upon one from over the border. So if we moved one from the mainland onto the Isle of Wight and then we had significant incidents, say in Basingstoke area, we would be able to call upon our colleagues from other fire and rescue services to do that. And likewise, they do the same for us. So there are a number of, if you look at it within our partnership area, there was 9 aerial ladder platforms within our control partnership area. 5 of those were in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. So we have got a good coverage of those aerial ladder platforms. The commercial ALPs, from what I understand of those ALPs, are more like a cherry picker. They are there to lift or operate at a higher level rather than the water systems, the camera systems, the fog systems, the lighting, etc. that what we use it for from that, and also from a rescue point of view, we have different capabilities there. So on a quick turnaround, probably not. But we do have companies that are making them often, and Gloco Emergency One, so there would be another opportunity for us to do that. I'm fairly confident with the numbers of the Isle of Wight being, deployed over the 5-year period 34 times, and over that time there was never two ALPs deployed at the same time to different incidents. So that's why the decision, in my opinion, is able to be as it is for the one ALP on the Isle of Wight. Yeah, I've got the other questions here. Just revert to my notes. So arrangements for the Isle of Wight, again, really interesting conversation because it is to do with the, maybe if we do need to remove the Isle of Wight ALP for maintenance or for reasons, or if it is deployed and another ALP is required. We have arrangements in place with both Wight Link and Red Funnel to prioritise our attendance onto the Isle of Wight ferries. So there is an emergency, I'm not talking about normal travel as such, but an emergency response. We do have priority to put our vehicles on. Likewise do the police and the ambulance service in for that matter. So we do have that in place. And on a daily basis, we are moving vehicles backwards and forwards across to the Isle of Wight, whether that is through cover or through planned extrications for them to do their training, etc. It's a period where you can't guess when that's going to be, because that's the nature of medical type of emergencies and medical emergencies for SCAS. So we don't have a set time or anything when we go across, but there is that movement in place. But it is challenging for us. I'm not going to hide the fact that it's not easy. It is challenging because there is a delay waiting for a ferry to come in. They won't mobilise a ferry early for us. There is a delay in that, which is why we need to be preempting and looking at what's going on the islands particularly, to be able to pre-book those vehicles onto it. But it does happen on a daily basis of how we get across to the Isle of Wight. Yes, so it's an interesting one. So I think the question, I've got to answer question 4, working with our representative bodies and then the 16 firefighters, it came in together. So I'll try and split those two out if I can, just to give you the context behind it. So We have been speaking to our representative bodies. Some of those are in the public gallery at the moment on a regular basis. Now, when I say regular basis and we're in engagement, that doesn't always mean that we're agreeing and we're going backwards and forwards. There are some robust conversations and some points that maybe we've not considered, and points also that rep bodies may not have considered. So there's been some really good dialogue through those periods of times. In certain areas where we've gone into consultation or engagement, they've always had the opportunity to respond as a union, but also their members and our personnel have the individual ability to respond into those consultations. And that consultation is detailed both within the paper of how we've done those internal and external consultations, as well as the Appendix A and B. A good example of that is where we're talking about our officer, the FDS system, the officer systems, where the members of the FBU asked, particularly the FBU, to negotiate on their behalf, and that was a negotiation between FBU members, the branch members and our officers to come to a place where an agreed rota going forward has been achieved. There's still other bits to work on, but the agreed rota to be achieved. So good work in that, and we've had those consultations back. If you do look at on the documents there, it does detail the answers or the main topics that have been raised by both the unions and the members for us to consider. So that is available to you to see that work that's gone on. If I move on to the 16 firefighters, which was part of it, clearly reducing the fire and rescue service by 16 whole-time firefighters is something that I wouldn't want to do, and something I know that the unions and other people wouldn't want to be in a place. We are facing the funding gap, and we've had to find ideas and options to reach that funding gap. As always, we look at the most efficient, effective way of running the fire service, and we've tried to look at how technology and vehicles can help us in that. If you look at the response support vehicle, used to be called a special equipment unit, and that's what I always think of it is, so if I go back to that, I'm sorry, but the response support vehicle, the RSV, it's a vehicle that delivers equipment to an emergency. It becomes a capability when you have our excellently trained firefighters, in this case, heavy rescue, and the equipment at the same time, at the same incident. Separately, they're not that capability. What the fleet maintenance team has been able to do in fleet management is look at the new ways of working with vehicles to say there is a way of delivering the heavy rescue concept equipment on a frontline fire appliance. That's a really good option for us now, because it gives us the option to remove the 16 firefighters, so 2 at any one time, driving and supporting that vehicle to get to an incident. That allows me to have the opinion that we can remove those 16 firefighters from driving those vehicles in instance. However, it would be amiss of me if I didn't say, if I did not need to find that money, if I did not need to find that just under £1 million, I would use the same thing with the RSV and the heavy rescue equipment going on to the frontline fire appliance, as we're doing, but I would use those people or that money to support our availability of our frontline fire appliances.
About redundancy, and I think it'd be worth talking about the rest of our staff at the same time, because we did organise a scheme which allowed some of our back office staff to think of different process. So I'm going to ask Molly just to speak about our approach to Mars and the scheme we've used to save money in other parts, but particularly to clarify the point about frontline whole-time firefighters.
Thank you. Yeah, so firstly, if I just pick up in terms of the changes that are outlined in this report, through our sort of workforce planning and our understanding of our establishment, our forecasting, and looking at kind of turnover that we have within the organisation, we're confident that the changes within this report will be achieved without any need for redundancies of firefighting roles. So we have absolutely no intention, and there has not ever been any intention as part of those consultation processes or the engagement with staff to consider redundancies. We are confident we will achieve that through natural wastage. And actually, in terms of our turnover and our forecasting, it's likely that we will still need to continue to undertake whole-time recruitment over the next few years, even despite having managing a reduction in the workforce. So that's what our workforce planning is currently showing us. So I'm confident in respect of that. In terms of the other changes that we've made across the organisation in order to meet these financial challenges, so we have undertaken a piece of work looking at the design of our organisation, particularly amongst our support staff roles, to understand which of those roles are kind of most critical to us and to us achieving our service objectives and priorities. And that's led to us having to look at those roles quite closely and make some difficult decisions about people's continued employment. Ahead of making those decisions, what we did was we offered all of our support staff teams the opportunity to submit a resignation. So it was the mutually agreed resignation scheme, which meant that people could put themselves forward for that and effectively be paid an enhanced voluntary like a redundancy payment. So we had 18 people who left our organisation as a result of that scheme across the directorates that we manage. Sadly, that wasn't enough members of staff in order to meet the financial challenge that we had, and so we are now in the process of going through consultation with some of our teams about redundancy. So there are people within the organisation who are affected and who will be facing redundancy. They are our support staff teams and not our frontline teams. But it is important that you understand that the challenge is being addressed across the whole organisation. It's just that today this paper is focused on the changes within the operational part of the organisation.
Thanks, Molly. I just want to pass back to Rob quickly. He's got one update, I think.
Yeah, I'm sorry, members. Just to correct a figure that I mentioned, I think it's worth doing now rather than being on the record that it was wrong, which was the ALPs. Both ALPs were used on average 34 times per year over a 5-year period, not 34 times, sorry, 34 times in total. So I just wanted to correct the record of that.
You've answered the one so far. Okay. Stephen, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. On that particular point that Rob's just mentioned, is he saying that the two ladders were used 34 times each? So that's a total of 68. Or have I misunderstood that, is the first question. And the second thing really is building on what he said about the 5B, because the lowercase new heavy rescue vehicle, I think, reading between the lines of what he said, is basically an ordinary standard-sized fire appliance with the rescue stuff built in as well, so that it can do the job both of a fire appliance and of the rescue vehicle. Have I got that right? If I've got that right, then I think I understand the logic of it. I'm still worried about losing the firefighter posts, but I understand the rationale he's put forward. But I'd be grateful for a comment on just those 2 points, please, Chairman.
So, Rob, was the 30, it was the movements of the outputs each or both of them?
Sorry, I've miswrote down the first question there. So yes, if you on page 17 of Appendix A, it mentions 34 times average number of incidents that either of the island air ladder platforms attended each year over the last 5 years, which would total 169 incidents in that 5-year period.
So it's effectively 17 each per annum?
Yes.
On average.
If you words out that way, yes.
Thank you.
And on the second question, the heavy rescue appliance is being designed that it can attend, for instance, house fires, grass fires, RTCs, its normal capability, but it would also carry in a redesigned vehicle the heavy rescue equipment, which, if I said to you things such as high pressure airbags, which isn't carried on any other vehicles apart from currently the RSV, that would be on this new heavy rescue appliance.
Because we've got 3 RSVs, as I understand it. How many heavy rescue vehicles are we proposing to get?
Okay, we've got 4 RSVs. We have one on the Isle of Wight at Newport. We have one at Redbridge, one at Basingstoke and one at Cosham currently. We are in the process of purchasing 3 new heavy rescue pumps, which will be at Cosham, Redbridge and Basingstoke. The savings come from Cosham and Redbridge, of reducing by 8 firefighters per those stations, no saving at Basingstoke, and we'll be keeping the RSV at Newport, but that will be redesigned into a more equipment on the response vehicle because of the unique way that the island is made up. That's the reason why that would be remaining at that station.
Sally. Sorry, no, Fran, please.
I'm going to go back to the very beginning of the discussion, if I may. I've been into detail, and thank you for all that, and I hear everything that's been said. Roger, the Conservatives did what they had to do at the time, and I'm not going to go into politics either, but a Lib Dem government and would be burdened with the same financial problems as the current government. No one wants to cut services, any services. I don't know what we do about national funding of public services, but I don't think the current government is going to gives me any hope that they know how to deal with it either. But I think with all these proposals, we really need to think very carefully before we actually carry them out. I know the staff have really carefully thought about this, but I can hear reluctance in the voices, of course. And if there is some way we can just hold fire, pardon the pun, I just feel, is there anything else that we could do or adjustments that could be made? I'm particularly really worried about, even though what Rob has said just now, about reducing 16 whole-time firefighters when we know that actually, apparently, there aren't sometimes enough staff to crew fire engines. So I'm just speaking generally here, but I would like us to think, is there anything else we can possibly do before we go ahead with this? Thank you.
Okay, noted. Chief, do you want to say anything? No? Sally.
Hi, yeah, thank you, Chairman. I did want to come in right at the beginning, so I don't know whether there's much point in saying this now, but I'll still say it. In the Constitution, I will just read out the authority's vision. Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Authority is committed to ensuring that Hampshire and the Isle of Wight have an efficient and effective fire and rescue service which makes life safer for everyone. And also, on the Constitution 2.3, on page 6, we as members set the strategic direction for the service representing the electorate. We do face the electorate, and they to their hearts, fire is very important to them out in our communities, of course, and that's as it should be. And just to add on from what the chairman said right at the beginning of the meeting, I've already got in process. It's been hard over recess with the government, and everybody's on holiday and whatnot. I've already been in contact with 2 of the 7 Labour MPs. I don't just want letters sat on desks. I don't want more letters being sent. I really want a face-to-face meeting with the minister to plead our case here in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. I have a meeting with Satvir Kaur's team next week to discuss getting more support for us to have a meeting with the ministers sat round a table. Yes, and also, just on record, I am disappointed in my government for not supporting us fully in the national insurance contributions. 50% really screwed us over, basically. We had to find the money, and we wasn't expecting to find that money. They said that they would fully fund us, just like the police, but again, the fire service gets the raw deal. So I'm not happy with my government, and I will let them know that when I hopefully secure this meeting involving all 7 Labour MPs across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Zoe, please.
Thank you. Like Sally, we all are in order, so there's some things I won't repeat, but I think in the context of all of this is financial stewardship is becoming increasingly difficult. And we've heard, I think, it's over 2 decades now of cuts between the governments and coalitions that have worked between that time. And And we've also heard, obviously, about the balance of reserves and our continued priority of transformation and prioritising the safety of firefighters with contaminants, for example. The growing of risks, demand, we heard about rescue, but also obviously now we work with medical responders, so that in demand, and also public expectation. We mentioned about the national insurance. The other thing I just want to mention is the funding from central government. And I will mention the Fair Funding Review in a second. But actually, it's not reflective of our service. That funding is not reflective of our urban and rural differences and our response times and the demand. It's not reflective of our areas of deprivation. The fire service is similar to Hampshire County Council. We're perceived as affluent. And actually, the sprawl of our demand across those urban and rural and our areas of deprivation actually cause us greater financial stress. So I just want to, add to that context. And what I want to do is, at the moment, I am reassured regarding our intent, our values, the debate we're having today, the hard work of all the officers, both yourself, Neil, and with Rob as the financial officer, and that reassurance that we're all on the same page, that we're doing the best for our residents and for our firefighters and for the fire service. However, like anything, this has been a journey, and what I want to just reflect is there has been some substantial material changes over the last month, if not couple of months. And I think this is reflective of your point, Neil, that the recommendation 5 is about implementation and the timeline, and I just want to be reflective of that. Those material changes have been the Fair Funding Review, which actually sees the fire service worse off. We also have had confirmed from the government that devolution will go ahead and the PCC role will be in place to 2027. So there will be changes in governance for the Fire Authority. And we also have had the publication of the Inspectorate report. First of all, what I want to say with the Inspectorate report is actually our financial planning and future affordability is actually ranked as good. And I think that goes to my point of having reassurance. However, what I am asking, and I am proposing a recommendation, which I'll take at the end of debate, Chairman, is I do want to seek further assurance myself through some of those recent material changes through the funding, the Fair Funding Review, and in particular the Inspectorate report. So specifically, they do relate to recommendation 5, B, C and D, where we have points in the Inspectorate report that for me requires further assurance when we talk about best use of resources and right people, right skills. So like I said, I do have a recommendation, but I'm quite happy, like Roger, to propose that recommendation after we have debate.
Thank you. Keep your powder dry until, David.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Chairman. Ultimately, we have to balance the books. We can't magic money from somewhere or magic anything else that we might need. Oh, and just apologies for everyone when I said we don't do party politics. Clearly there has been a little bit, but I rather hope that's the exception that proves the rule. This is about funding, whichever government happens to be in power, and whether we get enough money from them or not. That clearly involves a discussion. But there were 3 things here that I was going to just pick up on. Under the current listed recommendations, when we talk about 4A, cease operations of our out of Bembridge fire station. Now, my understanding is that that hasn't been a frontline fire station for some time, but that's not reflected in this report, and I think it would be hugely useful to ensure that there's a narrative that says it hasn't been a frontline station for some time, and therefore we're going to cease operations. Those sorts of additions would be hugely useful. And also to pick up on David Harrison's point about remove an aerial ladder platform from the Isle of Wight. I thought, cripes, we're going to take the aerial ladder, which we're not. There are 2. And I did a few sums, and it works out that if we're using the ALP 34 times each year, that's less than 10% usage. So 90% of the time it's not being used. I mean, I suppose in terms of firefighting, it would be better if it was never used, so we'd never be having to fight a fire. But that strikes me as being a percentage that does allow for routine maintenance and should enable the one that we have to be used when it's needed for the majority of the time. and the last point, perhaps the most important, because it deals with people. Implement a new heavy rescue vehicle where we lose 16 whole-time firefighters. Now, I'm not sure about everyone else, but I hate the term natural wastage. It sounds like the fantastic people who deliver the service are going to be naturally wasted. Well, I'm reassured, well, you're not, guys, you're doing a fab job, but I was reassured from Molly that actually in that instance there would be no, and the plan is to have no redundancies. It just means that we will be recruiting a bit less than we're having left. So that's reassuring. But as a general point, I'm happy to see a little bit more research and obtain further reassurance on these suggestions, because, to repeat what I said at the beginning, because it's important, we do have to balance the books. We do have to have a viable fire service, fire and rescue service, and we don't want to have the commissioners come in because we've got the books out of kilter. That would be a bad thing for all the residents. So happy to go along with the principle of a bit more research and some further reassurance on these matters. Thank you.
Okay, David, thank you. I mean, the word that seems to be coming out strongly at the moment is reassurance, which is good. That's what we're here for. In terms of, there hasn't been an active fire station in Bembridge since 2020. But of all the things on the paperwork, I mean, Bembridge and Yarmouth are not an issue. I mean, we decided. I go to Bembridge I've been going to Bembridge for 50 years, and they're on me the whole time. But they're not worried about it because Ryde is now 24/7 and provides ample coverage. The trouble with both of those is they have lifeboats, and we can't get crews for our engines because all the available people go to the lifeboat, which is difficult. Anyway, we'll come back to that. But thank you for that. Who's next? Lou. Oh, sorry, I'll come back.
Thank you, and I'll try not to repeat too much of what's been said already. Obviously, these are tough decisions, and I do think that the world has moved on since our meeting back in February, which does lead me to have concerns, particularly given the HMI judgment about best use of resources and whether this is in fact the way we should be going. I think our populations are growing all the time. We have got more and more development. We are experiencing more and more wildfires. We are experiencing more and more demand on the surface. So to see the front line reduced, and I do understand that this would be from people who will be leaving the service of their own volition, not being naturally wasted, but people that will be leaving. But that puts an extreme pressure on those that remain behind. And ergo, what are the implications for our members of our public? We're having more densely populated areas which would never have had demand, suddenly having 3,500, 7,000 houses. So our demand is definitely changing. I'm also concerned that we will be having a change in governance and a change in leadership very soon, and that they will be inheriting our decisions, and we have to take into account what are we providing them with when they come in. I know we need to have government to step up to the plate, and I genuinely, I don't care whose government it is, and I'm fortunate that I don't have to worry about that in the strictest sense, but government needs to understand that because we live in an area which may be perceived to be affluent, we have no other opportunities to increase the amount of money we draw in other than what we are given by them and what we can raise through council tax, which is very minimal because even that can be capped. So I would most certainly want us to highlight this, and I'm thankful that you mentioned you'll be meeting with the Minister. I think that's absolutely critical, that we need to state our case. I think I am nervous about losing so many people from the front line at this point in time, given all the other changes which we had not predicted affecting this authority back at the beginning of the year, and things have changed significantly. So I do have reservations, particularly around recommendation 5, but that's my 5 pence worth on the matter. Thank you.
Lou, yeah, our job here is to make the right decision. That's what we're here for. Chief?
Thank you. Just a couple of points in the last 2 points raised. Just point out for the point about Bembridge, paragraph 25 describes new operating model since 2020. So it's described in there. So the fact we've been doing it differently for some time because of having no choice. Your point, Councillor Parker-Jones, about the changing in our demography, some of our challenges in society. When I described earlier the national standard for community risk management planning, that's very much the system we've used, which incorporates all of that analysis, and it's not all contained in the appendix, but it is all available to members should you seek some more. It's all be available through our website, which delves into the analysis of our communities, the likely risk associated with those communities, because we know certain types of occupancy in a house are more likely to have a fire. If they have a fire, they're more likely to be injured or die from a fire. So we map those types of households across our county, across the counties, and therefore putting our prevention, our protection, and our response capabilities in the right places to serve those. That's why we tend to find quicker, heavier response in cities because there's more people. And in the simplest form, the more houses you have, the more likelihood of a fire. But it doesn't always follow with new housing stock, or affluent areas tend to be lower risk. So they are analysed through this CRMP process, which is where we end up with the conclusions which are drawn out in this proposal. So whilst I completely understand the nervousness, as your Chief Officer, my job is to turn your challenging budget situation into an operational capability, which I am able to say, this is as safe as you can get it with the money you've got. So earlier we heard the suggestion, is there other things we can do? I can assure you, we have looked under every single cushion, we've looked down the back of the sofas, we've looked everywhere for money to make sure we don't have to do some of the things we are doing. As the ACO said earlier, we'd rather use the money for these 16 posts to augment and support our central crewing for our fire engines. That is not possible because we have a budget to balance. So, but I do accept the nervousness. I understand that's a consideration. As your Chief Officer, my job is to advise you on the operational matters you need to carry out, and that's what we've done in this report.
Rob, I meant to come back to you. You were going to say something earlier.
No, it's fine. I just wanted to point out where the other areas in the document were, but that's all been covered now. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. David.
Yes, I find myself agreeing with just about every contribution on this debate. And, party politics aside, I really genuinely feel as though we're all sort of pushing in the same direction on this. We set the budget much earlier in the year, so the financial parameters are where we are. And honestly, I think that the officers have done a terrific job in working as best they can to try and minimise the impact that it will have on operations. That said, things have changed a little bit in the months that have passed. I think we do have to have regard to Her Majesty's Inspectorate's comments, and again, I would support the proposal that means we have yet another look to see whether there's any material changes that we should be taking account of. Reserves, the whole question of reserves, when you're under pressure, you tend to look at reserves, and a lot of us have been looking at this under different forums as well. It's a natural thing to do, and I'm very aware that the unions have suggested that we might look at this. Perhaps there is something that maybe we could look at, because if you look at reserves in their individual silos, you know, sometimes it's worth taking a more holistic view of reserves and ask yourself the question, in terms of risk, is it necessary to have a full reserve for every contingency that we face? And I would perhaps make the case that maybe we could sort of look at it across the piece and ask the question, could we shave off anything that reflects the fact that not every risk is likely to happen within the next 12-month period? It may be that if we do that, we decide the answer is no, and we still need all those reserves in place. But maybe that's something that perhaps we could approach from that direction. Other than that, I think that responsible financial stewardship means that you keep the reserves. It'd be very easy for us to make a decision today which causes a problem a year or two down the line. It'd be very easy for us to say, well, we're only going to be a fire authority for a couple of years and then it's the mayor's responsibility. But actually it would be just as irresponsible in terms of community safety for us to be kicking this can down the road in the way that it's tempting to do. And also I think even from the union's point of view, when you're saying, well, you know, let's look at the reserves again, do we really want a situation where we're forced into compulsory redundancies because of, you know, a change in the financial circumstances? And I don't think that the unions would want that either. So I think what I'm getting to is that it's right and proper that we look at reserves, and we should do so in a holistic fashion. But I think we're so near to the cliff edge now that the only real answer is for government to have a change of mind in terms of the way it's funding us. And so I support all of the efforts that my colleague to the left, literally to the left, will be making with the Fire Minister, because I think that's probably the only route that we have left. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Dave. You mentioned, I was going to do it later, but you mentioned the mayor. Now, the only thing we seem to know for certain is that there will be a mayoral election in May next year. I mean, whether they're going to be borough elections or county elections, people keep bobbing up and down like a cork, I don't know, but we have it probably in our power, and if we don't, we'll make it in our power, that whoever gets elected as mayor will have at the top of their agenda proper financing for the fire service. I mean, if we make a big enough fuss about that as being a real issue, because this is what affects the residents of Hampshire more than anything else, I think we can make a real campaign, whoever the candidates are coming up for mayor. And you won't get elected as mayor unless you can guarantee as much as you can that you will protect the finances of the fire service. End of. Don't you think? We can work on that as an avenue. Anybody else, ladies and gentlemen? No? Okay. Neil, do you want a closing statement? Or?
Yeah, before you consider the recommendations, thank you. And I can assure you the same heartfelt and concentration has gone into over 18 months of work, and Phil at the back there has been, sitting nervously thinking about the work he's gone into the analysis and the detail of making these high-level recommendations possible. So again, as the Chief Officer in this seat for a little while longer, it's imperative that I bring to you my advice as your operational lead, saying this is what we need to do in the circumstances. And I think we've chosen the least worst option of the things that we could do. As I said earlier, you face, the new chief faces, much more dire financial situations in the future coming unless something happens. And so I think the effort is worth putting into trying to avert that particular outcome. Today's recommendations, yes, are tough, but they're doable, maintaining our capabilities and our frontline skills and ability to provide a sharp emergency service for our counties across Hampshire and Isle of Wight. But I do appreciate there's some more assurance to take into account, and we can do that in the time we've got. But indeed, I need to settle the budget. Rob and I need to make sure we have got a plan to deliver the budget in terms of Rob's statutory duties as well as mine. And so we must be able to get on at some point in terms of delivering either these recommendations or adjusted. So before you consider them, I wanted to say to you that we've looked at under every rock, but I've said that already, and we'll consider every single other opportunity. But we'll certainly look at the assurances of the material changes that have happened of late, and certainly welcome the authorities' efforts in bringing ministers to bear, and indeed future mayors to think about how they might protect the Fire and Rescue Service. It would be my wish for this service moving forward, as I move away from it, that it is protected, because it is a fantastic establishment that's done so much for the people of Hampshire and the Isle of Wight in many ways people don't even see often. And if officers can be an assistance to that particular work with the Minister and others, please feel free to let me know. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Chief. So now we've got two amendments. So I suppose we'd better get them on the table. Roger?
Mr. Chairman, can I just formally propose mine? I did read it out earlier on what I was going to say, but I will pass round a slip of what, so everybody's got it in writing. Pass it on down.
You have to read it out while it's
I
being
will do.
passed, right?
I can do, yes. The additional recommendation which would form number 7, the above recommendations are reluctantly taken due to funding, and we further ask that the Chief Fire Officer and the Chairman to write to the Government in support of the NFCCC's press release of the 21st of August and ask for a further urgent funding for Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire Service.
Which will happen, yeah. So we need a proposer.
I'm proposing it.
Oh, you're sorry.
I'm
Sorry, we
proposing
need
it and
How about a
so he's going
seconder?
to second it, I think.
All agreed? Agreed. Okay. And then we have a second proposal, which Zoe would like to read out.
I don't know if we had an opportunity. Oh, we do have some printed versions. Fantastic. I think, Neil, to be fair, I think you summarised there in your closing speech the spirit in which my recommendation is proposed. And like we heard in February, the budget was set and the parameters within that was then given yourself, Neil, to make those operational decisions. However, my recommendation, so I have reassurance of good financial stewardship. I'm happy with that. However, I think in my context earlier on in debate, it is more about the implementation and the timeline and those material changes that I mentioned, such as the fair funding review and the inspectorate report. So I'm seeking further assurance from yourself within those areas. So my recommendation is to add to open that discussion with yourself, Neil, and with the team to have more assurance and to look at the implementation and timeline of recommendation 5, specifically 5B, C and D. The amendment reads, the authority asks the Chief Fire Officer and senior team revisits the recommendation 5, B, C and D, considering changes that have come to light, such as the HMI Inspectorate report, and offers further assurance to the Fire Authority, providing an opportunity to answer the questions posed by the authority before further implementation. I propose.
I'll second.
Don't fall over yourself. Let me select the Vice Chairman to second that. Okay. So I suppose we now come to, so that changes the recommendation in your paperwork. But on those, sorry, that changes the recommendation which is in your paperwork. But on the basis of Zoe's amendment and of Roger's, do we agree? Agreed? So we're happy to move forward? Good. Excellent. Thank you. Right, where are we? Item 12, which is Property Matters, page 213. And if I could ask the heroic but injured Matt Robertson if he can present this paper, please.
Thank you, Chair. Afternoon, members. So this report is a regular report which reports retrospectively on property transactions which officers have taken under the scheme of delegation. So that's any transactions which fall outside of the parameters in paragraph 3A, which are in the Constitution. So you'll see the various things that have happened over the last period at paragraph 6. I just want to point out, Chairman, the recommendation is incorrect. It refers to paragraph 5 when it should refer to paragraph 6.
Okay, members, any points?
Chairman, I think we can forgive Matt on this occasion because of his injury. Yes.
Okay, so the recommendation then is that the property-related matter set out in paragraph 5 be noted by the full authority. Noted? Noted? Okay. Now comes the time to start excluding people. Let me just read this out. To resolve that the public be excluded from the meeting during the following items of business, as it is likely, in view of the nature of the business to be transacted or the nature of the proceedings, that if members of the public were present during these items, there would be disclosure to them of exempt information within paragraph 3, part 1 of the Schedule 12A to the Local Government Act 1972, and further, that in all the circumstances of the cases, the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information for the reasons set out in the report. So, members, with your permission, I would now like to close the meeting to the public. Agreed? Agreed. Sparks, turn it off.